This video is a part 6. Make sure to watch the previous parts first.
Oh,
The
I
year is
have.
2016. The A-Button Challenge is now a phenomenon. Panenkoek 2012 is a superstar. A community is quickly forming. But soon enough, this wave of newcomers realize something. Their task at hand is monumental. The A-Button Challenge has to come face to face with Tick Tock Clock.
Yeah. So before it starts, I'm gonna say my prediction. I'm probably wrong. I think in the last part we discovered a way to gain a ton of speed, and then there's also that when you dive, that speed's converted into vertical momentum. So I think that's how it's going to. A lot of these are gonna be solved, at least a little bit. Like a jump dive to just jump once all the way to the top. There could also be a bunch of like using bombs to like hit yourself up things, but I'm not sure. Those are my predictions.
Panenkoek was still in a period of relative inactivity. Despite some developments being made in 2016, nothing was released until November when he put out a pair of improvements that had been discovered months prior. The first one was in Jolly Roger Bay. The sidewall of the ship is actually not always a wall. This is because the status of floor, wall, or ceiling is not an inherent property of a given triangle.
That's really weird.
It depends on its orientation. A triangle that is facing generally upwards is a floor, one that is facing downwards is a ceiling, and any triangle facing sideways is a wall. But as it turns out, for a triangle to be treated as a wall, it needs
When it's a floor, you can probably slide off of it. So when it's blue, they might be able to kick up it, maybe?
to be nearly perfectly vertical. As soon as it tilts just a little bit, it becomes a floor or a ceiling. As the ship sways to one side, this wall temporarily becomes a floor for just long enough that Mario can frame walk up. It
Okay,
was
frame walk.
refreshing for
Not
the
kick, but
ABC
frame
crew
walk.
to stumble upon a relatively simple A-press save. Little did they know that this would be the final one.
Final one on the
The other
stage.
development came in Tick Tock Clock. While in the past, the ABC had done its fair share of RNG manipulation when dealing with Chuckya, Goombas, and moving coins, these baby steps paled in comparison to the most advanced form of RNG abuse yet, Pendulum Manipulation. On the random setting, the clock's moving parts rely heavily on the RNG value to determine their pattern. The pendulum is one of them. However, its behavior is pretty bare bones. At the end of each swing, it calls the RNG function. 2/3 of the time, it swings slowly. 1/3 of the time, it swings faster. The pendulum accelerates until its angle goes beyond 0, at which point it slows down at the same speed, ending up at roughly the same angle on the other side. No matter if it swings fast or slow, this fact doesn't change. The pendulum always has the same, somewhat narrow range of motion, until something strange happens. Because the pendulum accelerates until its angle goes beyond 0, if it somehow passes directly at 0, it will accelerate on that frame and start slowing down on the next. However, when it comes back the other way, if it passes at 0 again, it would also keep accelerating for one more frame.
Okay, I see.
If the pendulum is on either side, it will experience a force pulling towards the center.
That's
But
such
if
a
it's
weird
exactly
bug.
in the center, it will experience a force in the same direction as its movement, resulting in a net increase in total energy. The pendulum's range of motion therefore keeps increasing for each swing passing
I wonder
through
what
0.
happens when it does a
Now,
full.
2 questions remain. How does the pendulum
180.
suddenly start passing through angle 0, and how can it keep passing through angle 0 repeatedly? Well, those are really just the same question. How can we manipulate the pendulum to do exactly what we want? When the pendulum chooses a fast or a slow swing, the option it chooses slightly changes where it will cross the middle point, and therefore where it will stop on the other side. If the acceleration was a fixed value like on the slow, fast, and still settings, the pendulum would always swing between the same 2 points. In fact, whenever the random pendulum chooses the same speed twice in a row, it returns precisely to the same point after 2 swings. But if it chooses a different speed on every swing, the slight variation in where it crosses the middle point causes the pendulum to never quite return to the same position every time.
Interesting.
Similarly, the point where the pendulum crosses the center slightly oscillates around the middle. All that's left is to keep alternating speeds until the pendulum happens to line up exactly at angle 0. It takes 291 swings to get there. Once it gets there, what you want is the opposite. Now you want the pendulum to keep crossing angle 0 on
Okay,
every swing.
yeah. So you'd want it to stay on one of the modes. Okay, that's interesting.
So the pendulum has to choose the same speed on every swing to keep gaining momentum. The actual manipulation part is pretty simple, if only a bit tedious. The RNG function is a complex operation that basically takes a number from 0 to 65,535 and spits out a new, seemingly unrelated number. It iterates upon itself, which means that the output from one call becomes the input for the next call. A given input always yields the same output. For example, 2044 always yields 129, which always returns 15,937.
Oh yeah, that's right, because it's algorithmic. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so on. Therefore, the RNG function is a closed loop. Once an output is the same as a previous input, the loop is closed and the values cycle in the same exact order. The full loop starts at 0 and contains 65,114 numbers. Every time the function is called, the value advances one step through the loop. This can happen multiple times in a single frame, depending on how many objects are calling RNG at any given time.
Oh,
thankfully,
that's interesting.
There's one simple way for Mario to call RNG on demand, kicking up dust. To determine their exact position, dust clouds call the RNG function. Therefore, by choosing to generate dust, Mario has direct control over the RNG to a certain degree. Because the pendulum only calls the function at the end of each swing, there is plenty of time in between to manipulate RNG to a desired value. This is what Pendulum does. Once up on this platform,
it's so funny how the developers of this game chose to make the dust particles RNG. That's crazy. I mean, why not just make it like a set thing? Because this exists, we could do this. That's so cool.
Dust to get the pendulum to cycle through the 291 swings until it crosses angle 0 and starts gaining momentum. Now that pendulum manipulation is in full swing, the pendulum's range of motion keeps increasing until it swings through the ceiling and onto the next floor. Then Mario rides that swinging pendulum up and brings down time jumps on moving bars from 4 down to 3 A presses. Unfortunately, pendulum manipulation ended up only being useful in this spot since other pendulums couldn't provide any meaningful help from swinging outside of their usual range. In June 2016, a tester by the name of Zimbabwe posted a comment on Pan and Quick's video about the pit and the pendulums in 2 A presses. She said, "Can this be done on the random setting? It's possible to do a kick off the wall while grabbing the star and fall all the way down to the red coin platforms. I think this could save an A press." That comment got lost in the sea of empty claims Panin was subject to all the time. He couldn't replicate what this comment was talking about, so he dismissed the idea, just like the hundreds of other empty claims that came before and since. It took until November for Plush to look into the matter, but when he did, he found out that Zimbabwe was absolutely right. She had found a way to save one more A press using a trick called Kick Recoil Momentum. Thanks to a convenient pendulum, Mario is able to kick the wall and pick up the star simultaneously. Normally, picking up a star zeroes out Mario's horizontal speed, but kicking the wall gives him a lot of backwards momentum. He then falls down with the star with that momentum, which is just barely enough to reach the lowest spinner and end the stage on a rotating platform.
Oh my gosh, and then the displacement thing. Okay, this is crazy.
Rest of the work, and a second Tick Tock Clock re-entry A press was saved.
That's actually so
broke
cool.
The tie between the Japanese Nintendo 64 version and the VC version, returning the original release to the spot of single best version for the A button challenge. 2017 was a transitional year. Even though the community was bubbling with activity, the actual challenge itself had its most quiet year since 2012. Instead, people were busy learning more about the game and developing new tools. Specifically, Daneboo and Pan and Quick, along with a few occasional other contributors, created the Super Mario 64 Technical Runtime Observer and Object Processor, STROOP. STROOP is basically RamWatch on steroids. It runs alongside the emulator and keeps track of every useful piece of memory. It also has the ability to hack in arbitrary values and every way of visualizing data under the sun.
Wow.
It took years of shaping up to make STROOP such a robust and versatile tool, but the result is worth the investment. From this point onwards, the Super Mario 64 tasking community as a whole benefited from the incredible work of Daneboo, Pan and Quick, and everyone else who worked on STROOP. So by the end of the year, the ABC community was fully ready to tackle the remaining 28 A presses. I say 28 A presses because 2017 did have one single improvement by Iver Songe on Stomp on the Thwomp.
This gaining speed, it is.
Method had to use
I was right! Yes! I was right, they did use it once. The dive momentum thing.
because the
Yes!
angle Mario was coming at was not good enough to reach the star directly. Eversonge simply found a better position and angle for the pedal spot that did allow for a direct jump to the star, and that was the improvement of the year. But while 2017 was dry for the ABC, it also saw an unlikely resurgence, the return of real-time runs. Ever since Bob Mario's flamboyant entrance in 2007, the interest for real-time ABC had fallen drastically in favor of tool-assisted super plays. The ABC was seen more as a puzzle than a test of skill. That changed when Bad Boot took on the task of beating the game with 70 stars in a single segment in as few A presses as possible. This had never been attempted before. The only thing that came close was
Dramatic
Field's 10
reenactment.
stars in no A presses 16 years earlier, which was only marginally beaten by Japanese runner Altair with 12 stars in 2011. So much had improved since then, but on the other hand, so many techniques were incredibly precise and could never be replicated with human hands and a controller.
Yeah.
Misalignments that require lining up with a 1x1 unit square. Cloning, which requires tons of object slot manipulation and precision. RNG and enemy manipulation, and any kind of hyperspeed technique, which were all decidedly off limits. The task was monumental, but Bad Boot was up to it. On September 24, 2017, he sat down and gave it his best. He pressed on for over 5 hours. As always, time was very much a secondary concern. When Bad Boot defeated the final Bowser and collected the giant star, his total A press count read 46. He made a few mistakes along the way. He used 38.
So would the way this category work be if you were able to do it in 45, even if you did it in a longer amount of time, it would beat it? That's what I'm assuming.
Planned A presses and 8 to retry sections where he fell. But overall, this was a surprisingly good first attempt and a very high bar for others to clear. A month later, Bad Boot gave it another solid shot.
Oh, is that what the right here, the 11557934, is that what that's signifying? How many A presses would be perfect?
This time, he had refined his strategy a little bit. He got his planned A press count down to 34 before the run.
Okay,
And
yeah,
it went even better than last time. He made 0 mistakes in the entire run. He did choose to add 1 A press for Scale the Mountain instead of having to resort to the cloning strategy with the preset Hope in Tiny Huge Island for his own sake. So after a bit less than 5 hours this time, Bad Boot had beaten Super Mario 64 with 70 stars and only 35 A presses.
Wow.
This record was incredibly good. Although it obviously didn't include the most advanced task-only solutions, it still made use of cloning, start-dance clip, frame walking, and plenty of crazy tricks.
That's cool.
The run was so good that it stood as the 70-star record for years. Meanwhile, other players were interested in the individual star approach. The starting point was nearly 10 years old and well over 200 A presses. The strategies had evolved beyond recognition in that time. With all this modern knowledge at hand, runners Billy War, Lord Sneck, The Real, Zion, Ivan178, and a few others, including Patent Quick himself, started chipping away at the count. They crossed the 200 mark in November 2019. 2020 saw the most activity, with the total dropping from 180 in March to 116 in
Dang,
November.
this is dropping quick.
Finally, the 100 barrier was broken on July 27, 2021, and the most recent improvement from as recently as June 16, 2022 brought the A press count to 81. In the process, some truly incredible achievements were done, like the pit and the pendulums in only 3 A presses using super precise platforming to climb up the clock and to grab the star. Somehow, this is not even the most impressive part of the run. To get off this bowl, Billy War sent a bob-omb to a preset Hope high up in the air so it would reactivate and fall on top of him, knocking him off the pole. Another impressive feat was pulling off the hyperspeed walking and jump dive in real time to get Watch for Rolling Rocks and Amazing Emergency Exit in 1 A press each, done by Billy War and Ivan178. And perhaps even crazier is Big Boo's Merry-Go-Round in 0 A presses.
I remember this
even
one.
Tassers only managed in 2015 using 10 hours of Scuttlebug raising. It was done in real time in August 2021 by Billy War using just a couple minutes of Scuttlebug raising and running into the Scuttlebug with a Crazy Box. Taking damage while holding a Crazy Box acts like instant release. It transports the box to the Hope laterally but at Mario's height. Using the Hat in Hand glitch prevents the Crazy Box from rendering and updating the Hope. By setting the Hope at the right location beforehand, Billy War sent the Crazy Box above the Merry-Go-Round where it deactivated. After spawning the star, he reactivated the Crazy Box and managed to grab it before it would fall to the ground and break. He then bounced into the star, which completed the 0 A press run.
That's so
Sometimes the
cool.
real-time ABC crew got very creative and found much simpler solutions than what Pan and Quick had done years before. In the Deep Freeze was solved by Badboot when, to replace the task-only shell hyperspeed strategy, he simply learned the spin drift and bounced on it.
That's so
As
simple.
far as full game runs go, the real-time ABC needed a bit of extra motivation. So Pan and Quick announced a bounty in October 2020 for people to beat Badboot's 35. Panon was giving out $50 per A-press saved over the standing world record until the end of 2020. In the next couple of months, 3 players scrambled to get their A-press count lower. First came BRQM. On November 7th, he fired up a run with a route that would ideally get him 26 A-presses. After a few minor mistakes along the way, he ended up in Bowser in the Sky 9 hours into the run with 24 A-presses. If he closed it out perfectly, he could edge out the record by 3. But he couldn't handle the pressure. All it took was one bad fall. Sadly, one fall turned into many, and frustration took over. He finished the run with 55. The next day, Billy Warr, sprung from his work on individual stars, also set out to beat the record. His run went exceedingly well. He entered Bowser in the Sky after only 11 A-presses. He didn't choke in the most stressful part of the run. He closed it out in just 21 total A-presses. Actually, not quite. After failing the Star Dance clip to enter Hazymaze Cave, he had to reset to retry it, causing his A-press counter to lose 8 A-presses. His real total was actually 29. Still, he had beaten the record by 6 A-presses and achieved pretty much exactly what he had set out to do. At the end of November, a new runner by the name of Purple Juicebox entered the field. After a 9-hour-long effort, he managed to beat the record by another 3 A-presses. Again, the A-press counter is wrong because of a reset, this time due to technical difficulties. In December, Purple Juicebox continued to refine his strategies until the very end of the month. Meanwhile, BRQM was back with a vengeance. On December 27th, he did a run with an incredibly demanding 17 A-press route. He lost 6 along the way, but he was in Bowser in the Sky on a 23 A-press pace. But disaster struck again, and the record slipped from his hands once more. BRQM finished his run with 20.
Man, that's gotta feel so bad. 8.5 hours in. That sucks.
Presses, just shy of the record. With less than 48 hours to go, on December 30th, Purple Juicebox was ready to take on another run, this time with a 21 A-press route. He executed it near flawlessly. Purple Juicebox beat Super Mario 64
Holy, 4.5 hours.
4.5 hours using 22 A-presses.
He used one extra.
One single extra A-press was used at the start of Bowser in the Sky, and that is where the record stands today. The 120-star category...
Man, it's crazy because that's such a simple A-press that, like, it's so unfortunate that that's the one that was messed up.
And that is where the record stands today. The 120-star category was deemed a bit too daunting by the real-time ABC runners. It took until October 2021 for Billy Warr to take on the challenge. He put together a route that would ideally get 163 A-presses. He ended up scoring 53 over that, finishing out with 216. This record still stands. Finally, another category held the attention of real-time runners: max stars in 0 A-presses. Since Chris Oldfield's 10 in 2001 and Altair's 12 in 2011, so much had changed. Technically, up to 25 stars were now possible without Bowser in the Dark World, which was still task-only. Players battled in 2020 to get as close as possible to the maximum, a battle that was ultimately won by Zion on January 12, 2021, when he got all 25 possible stars and put this category to rest. Or so he thought. On February 16, 2022, Ivan178 completed Bowser in the Dark World with red coins in 0 A-presses in real time. Yes, that star with the VSC. Yes, that star with the misalignment. Yes, that
the
star
1
with
pixel
the frame walking up
misalignment.
the seesaw platform.
Oof.
A month and a half later, he would get 34 stars in 0 A-presses thanks to the extra stars in the basement. To this day, Ivan178 is still the only player to complete Bowser in the Dark World in 0 A-presses in real time, and he has sole control over this record as a result.
That's so
this
cool.
is where the real-time A-button challenge is today. After being dormant for 10 years, a small community formed around it, and its members are still lowering the A-press count on a regular basis. March 2018. The first improvement of the year came in Jolly Roger Bay and was the result of slow incremental progress over many years by Pan & Cook, Tyler Kinney, and Maria Nicolai. First, Mario frame walks up the pole to quickly gain a lot of sliding speed. Then he gains a little bit more on the bottom of the pole using a new technique called hyperspeed punching. Normally, if Mario is moving fast enough, pressing B will make him dive, but Mario can still punch at high speeds by using a slight control stick tilt on the frame he punches instead of a full tilt. During the punching action, Mario experiences a lower friction than usual. If he's standing on a steep enough slope, the downwards acceleration can overpower this unusually low friction, causing him to gain speed. Thanks to sliding speed conservation, he can reactivate that speed to quickly slide up the pole.
That's
Tyler
really
Kinney
cool.
had the idea of using another punch to lose less speed while sliding up. The extra speed at the top of the pole combined with the precise dive proved to be just enough to reach the platform and save the A-press. Then, 2 months went by without any improvements.
Another one.
Time and effort were poured into complex A-press saves, but nothing came to fruition for a while. Until the fateful night of May 26, 2018, when an unsuspecting speedrunner by the name of Andrew, after practicing movement in Bowser in the Fire Sea, decided to go to bed while leaving his console on overnight.
Yes, this thing. I know these, whatever they're called, they raise like 1 pixel at a time each time it goes up and down. It's really cool.
26, 2018, when an unsuspecting speedrunner by the name of
Accidentally
Andrew,
turned down the
after
volume.
practicing movement in Bowser in the Fire Sea, decided to go to bed while leaving his console on overnight. The next morning, he found something strange. The platforms had risen from the lava significantly. Over the next week, a mad dash in...
Isn't there like a thing though that if it stays on too long, it crashes? I feel like I remember that, but I could be wrong.
Community tried to understand and replicate this. Everyone fired up their game and impatiently waited for something to happen in Bowser in the Fire Sea. Andrew was playing on Wii Virtual Console, which was immediately suspected as being relevant. It quickly became apparent that the suspicions were correct. Whatever caused the platforms to rise from the lava seemed to be unique to the Wii VC release.
I actually didn't know
This made
that.
testing more inconvenient because emulators could not replicate the issue. Within just a few hours, Bad Boot had pinpointed the cause of the glitch. The Nintendo 64 console and emulators, when performing operations on float numbers, round the result towards the nearest float number, whereas Wii VC rounds the result towards 0. Because the platforms are at a negative Y value, as they bob up and down, their height ever so slightly drifts upwards. The problem is, for them to rise up enough to become useful for the A-button challenge, that rounding error needs to happen roughly 8 million times. This takes about 3 days of real time. Multiple excited community members such as Emilia, Barry, OneTed59, and Switch Palace Corner began live streaming on Twitch as they left their Wii on for days, watching the platforms rise up like grass growing. Despite both technical and skill issues leading to multiple failures, one thing became very clear: this new glitch worked. The rest of the stage was a bit different now that the other sinking platforms, also drifting towards 0, had sunk completely through the floor, leaving a very inhospitable Fire Sea. But Patton had no issue navigating that thanks to the safe zone on the edges. The very last A-press in 70 star was finally solved. Super Mario 64 was beatable without using the A button.
Yeah, but it has to be using the Wii Virtual Console. Okay.
The solution to get off the pole in Bowser in the Fire Sea was to bypass the pole entirely. After just a couple of days, Daneboo made a modified version of Mupin 64 that replicated the rounding error found in Wii VC, so Pan & Cook was able to make a proper task. To get the red coins, he simply entered the Bowser fight to reset the platforms back to normal, then used the regular strategy.
You can do that?
Of course, this A-press save
Like, it
came
still
with
counts?
a massive caveat. Again, it was exclusive to Wii. The achievement of solving the A-button challenge completely for 70 star felt a little hollow because it was abusing a glitch only present in an inaccurate emulated re-release. This also brought Wii VC back on par with Japanese Nintendo 64 for 120 star, since there were now 2 different A-press saves unique to each version that cancelled out. But the tie wouldn't last very long. Just 3 weeks later, with help from Bad Boot to figure things out, and from Pan & Cook to string everything together, Tyler Kinney unveiled the most off-the-wall insane ABC achievement yet. entering the secret aquarium in 0 A presses without parallel universes.
That's cool.
Before we begin, I want to mention that this next section is heavily based on the excellent video on Bad Boot's channel about this A-press save. The known strategy to enter the secret aquarium had one simple problem. To get from here to there, Mario needs more speed than he can possibly have and still be able to get from here to here. With PU speed not being an option, there had to be another solution. That solution was the glitchy ledge grab. No, not that glitchy ledge grab, the other kind. If you remember, to determine if Mario should grab a ledge, the game checks for a wall at 2 points, 30 units and 150 units above Mario's position. On the staircase leading to Bowser in the Sky, there are 2 ledges next to each other. The game checked for a wall at the lower ledge, then checked for a floor at the higher ledge. This type of glitchy ledge grab is a bit different. The wall below the ledge to the secret aquarium is ever so slightly tilted. Between the points at 30 and 150 units, the wall tilts away from Mario by 1/4 of a unit. So there's a gap of the same size where the wall check finds a wall at 30 units but not at 150 units, which triggers the floor check for a ledge grab. Like we've seen before, this check can find the floor all the way up to 238 units above Mario's position, allowing Mario to grab the ledge from a lower height. But how much lower? Well, enough to make coming in from this location viable. And that was all they needed to solve the puzzle. Well, not quite. There was just one simple problem. Sure, Mario could get from here to there with a lower speed than before, but there's no way to accurately guide Mario directly to the right spot below the ledge with such high speed. The angle required is simply unattainable with that amount of speed. Thankfully, sitting right there is the perfect way to redirect Mario to an arbitrary angle, a text box. Text boxes preserve Mario's speed, but once the text is cleared, he can turn to face any angle instantly, redirecting that speed to the new angle. This, along with precise speed and positioning in front of the door, does allow Mario to grab the ledge. But there was one simple problem.
Is it only the first time you enter that door? Is that the problem?
This text box is only here if Mario doesn't have enough stars to open the door.
Oh yeah.
Therefore, Mario must have 0 stars. It turns out this simple problem is a major issue because it rules out hyperspeed walking in Hazy Maze Cave. The method to enter Hazy Maze Cave requires getting a star from MIPS, which also only shows up if Mario already has 15 stars. If Mario can't enter Hazy Maze Cave, he can't carry infinite speed into the castle lobby. What other level could be used? Well, not many. With 0 stars, only Bob-omb Battlefield is accessible. There's also a way to reach Vanish Cap under the moat, but that one turns out not to be very helpful. Within Bob-omb Battlefield, Shell Hyperspeed immediately comes to mind. But there's just one simple problem. The shell isn't available until after getting stars 1 and 2 in the level, so it can't be used. Instead, C-up sliding saves the day. As a refresher, when C-up is pressed on a downward slope, Mario slides to a stop, but the slope overpowers the friction from sliding, resulting in a net acceleration. This is enough for Mario to gain over 200 speed. From there, Tyler Caney was able to bounce Mario to a tree and pause exit, which conserves Mario's sliding speed. However, 230 speed is nowhere near the 900 or so required for Secret Aquarium. Instead, it's used to send Mario to Bowser in the Dark World without the required 8 stars. The first key can be obtained, and the basement is now unlocked. In the basement, 2 more levels are accessible, Lethal Lava Land and Shifting Sandland. Let's turn our attention.
Then you need to get speed in one of these, and then somehow clip through that door to get into HMC. Okay. What on this stage can give you speed? I don't know if the shell's available yet, but that's one thing. That's like the only thing you can think of. Maybe you could do the C up thing again on one of the slopes, but
towards the ladder. In here, Shell Hyperspeed could generate a few hundred speed, but again, it's not enough. This time, Hyperspeed punching saves the day. In this corner of Shifting Sandland, the visual geometry doesn't match the actual level geometry. Everything in this zone is out of bounds. When Mario stands here and punches, he accelerates forwards but stays in place because he's attempting to move out of bounds. So long as he punches frame perfectly, he can build up infinite speed in this corner. However, there's one simple problem. As soon as Mario stops punching, he immediately and instantly loses all but 32 speed. Thankfully, by pressing Z at the right time, Mario starts sliding instead, which does conserve his speed. For one frame at least. After
One frame's enough,
Mario's
right?
sliding speed is capped to 100, but sliding also turns Mario slightly. With the right angle, this can turn Mario towards a valid position in bounds. After one frame, Mario ends up in the corner of the level, which happens to have a lower floor than the hyperspeed punching spot. So, Mario enters freefall and gets to keep his high speed. And now he gets to face several problems. First of all, with 45,000 speed, Mario's going way too fast. The target speed here is on the order of 2,000. Secondly, he's also headed face first towards out of bounds while in the air, so he's about to bonk. Last but not least, even if he could get out of this spot, Mario needs a way to conserve his sliding speed into the castle lobby through a pause exit. Solving all three problems was a stroke of pure genius from Tyler Caney and Bad Boot. The first problem was solved with a Koopa shell clone. A shell clone functions like a normal shell, except that the clone stays in place and Mario rides an invisible shell. It can also be reused. In fact, it's used 3 different times in this level.
That's really
The
cool.
shell was used here for an important property. If Z is pressed while Mario is riding a shell, he starts crouch sliding. Again, there's one small problem. This doesn't work if Mario is airborne. But thankfully, on the first frame where Mario's on the shell, the game doesn't check for that condition and Mario can press Z to crouch slide despite being in the air. So with one extra frame of sliding, another trick could be used to bring the speed down to a workable value, the 10K glitch. When the control stick is pulled back while Mario is sliding, a multiplier is applied to his speed to slow him down. The multiplier is meant to slow Mario down slightly more drastically the faster he's moving, so it follows this formula. More specifically, for every 10,000 speeds Mario has, the multiplier goes down by 1. So if Mario has a speed in the tens of thousands or higher, this formula can yield very interesting results. Here, by tilting the joystick ever so slightly backwards, it's used to instantly bring Mario's speed from 45,000 down to only 2,000.
Ooh, that's
But
close
there
to the
is,
target
you
time,
guessed it,
or target
one
speed.
simple problem. For Mario to land on the Koopa shell, he needs to fall down on it. Although he's in free fall, he hasn't started falling down yet. But if he spends one more frame in the air, he will bonk instead. Mario needs something to fall without bonking. Enter the fire clone. When Mario is burning in the air and moving towards out of bounds, he keeps his speed but falls straight down. From there, he can land on the shell clone, crouch to start sliding, pull the control stick back to activate the 10K
This is so
glitch and bring
ridiculous.
his speed down to 2,000. But then what? He still has no way of conserving that speed through a pause exit, and by the way, he's still headed face first into out of bounds. This is where the final piece of this puzzle comes in, a fly guy. With this lower speed, Mario can move for 1/4 step before bonking. On the frame that he bonks, his speed doesn't get killed immediately, only on the next frame does it get set to -16. However, the bonk is cancelled by landing on the fly guy before the speed is capped, so Mario's speed ends up being conserved and he starts twirling. After that, he can wait until the perfect moment to land and pause exit on the first frame to conserve his speed into the castle lobby. But there was one simple problem. How do you get all this stuff in the corner like that? The short answer is cloning and fly guy manipulation. Now for the long answer. The fly guy is nothing we haven't seen before. The annoying ones are the fire clone and the Koopa shell. The shell can be found in this block, which would be easy to reach with a tornado, but it only shows up after getting star 3, so on 0 stars there's no tornado here. Instead, the only method to get the shell is to open the box remotely and clone the shell. This can be done with a preset hope from another level, namely Bob-omb Battlefield. It just so happens that the perfect location for this is on the floating island, so to get the hope there, Mario needs to clone a Goomba and use the bloated Bob-omb glitch. No big deal so far. After placing the hope, Mario can then fall onto the slippery slope, get 200 speed, and clip into Bowser in the Dark World with the preset hope. Now an issue. When Mario fights Bowser for the key, he needs to grab Bowser, which automatically updates the hope. There's no such thing as hat in hand here, and instant release, while seemingly promising at first glance, doesn't actually work in this case. But remember, the hope updates when the game needs to draw the object Mario is holding. If we can't make Bowser invisible, what if we made Mario invisible? It turns out that we can, using pause buffered Hitstun. After taking damage, Mario is invincible for 30 frames, or until he's no longer colliding with the source of damage. This blinking during those events
I didn't know
no longer
that.
colliding with the source
I didn't know
of
you could do that.
damage.
That's actually really cool.
This blinking during those invincibility frames is determined by the global timer, a timer that simply goes up by 1 on every frame from power on. If this timer is even, Mario will be visible, and if it's odd, Mario will be invisible. The global timer doesn't stop when the game is paused, so it is possible to only unpause the game while the global timer is odd, causing Mario to remain invisible during the invincibility frames. In that short time, he can grab and release objects without updating the hope.
That's
This is pause buffered
insane.
Hitstun. After all this work, Mario enters Shifting Sand Land with the hope intact. Again, the hat in hand glitch is unavailable because the wing cap requires 10 stars and Klepto is too busy carrying a star around to steal Mario's hat. So pause buffered Hitstun has to be used to perform the remote releases. First, a Bob-omb is thrown to the hope where it deactivates. Then, another Bob-omb is used for cloning. When Mario gets near the high Bob-omb, it falls down and breaks the box, spawning the Koopa shell which Mario clones. He walks all the way to this spot to release it and uses it to get around faster. Then, this fly guy is manipulated while the other fly guy is lured into spitting fire for Mario to clone. Pause buffered Hitstun had to be used extensively here. Mario stays inside of the Poké to extend his invincibility period until he can walk up the slope.
Oh,
When
that's
the fly
so
guy spits
funny.
fire, Mario clones it and drops it at the hope laterally but at Mario's height, which places the fire clone just above the Koopa shell clone. Then, Pan and Quick finishes the fly guy manipulation and everything is now in place. Mario crouches, which turns him. He gets burned so not to bonk, lands on the shell to start sliding again, and the stick is pulled slightly backwards to trigger the 10k glitch and instantly bring Mario's speed to 2000. He bonks but cancels that bonk before his speed is capped, sending him into a twirl at 2300 speed. Now that Mario is in the lobby with 2000 speed, here comes the easy part. Just kidding, it's actually the hard part. First, one thing to keep in mind is that high-speed movement is very limited. Mario can only turn by up to 1/32nd of a turn or about 11 degrees in a single frame. This severely hinders movement options. Unlike when traveling at PU speed where most of the possible positions would be out of bounds anyway, Mario doesn't have the liberty of choosing which angle he wants to move in next. He sort of always has to hug the walls. The other major limitation is floor hitboxes, which only extend 78 units below the floors. This means that in any single quarter step, Mario can only ever move up to 78 units upwards. That's why he can't just go up the central staircase normally. For the final glitchy ledge grab to work, Mario needs about 920 speed, but to get up the central staircase, he can have at most about 500 speed. Instead, he will need to come at it sideways from as high as possible. The lobby movement, again solved by Tyler Caney, can be subdivided into 5 main sections. Entering the Jolly Roger Bay room, landing on this pillar, reaching the 8-star door, reaching the 1-star door, and finally, grabbing the secret aquarium ledge. Let's go through them one by one.
That's so
The first part
nuts.
is reaching the Jolly Roger Bay room, which is quite a bit higher. First, Mario's stored speed sends him into the Thwomp's fortress room where he has to carefully turn around and navigate back to the main lobby. After reaching this staircase, Mario needs to zigzag up to gain height in small enough increments. The geometry of this area just barely allows it to work. If the stairs had one more step, or if Mario needed slightly more speed, going up this staircase would have been impossible. Once in the Jolly Roger Bay room, Mario
Everything
is now
lines
at the
up
highest
perfectly.
point he can be before heading towards the central staircase. However, he can't go directly to the staircase because at this angle, he would shoot past it and into the Bob-omb battlefield room. Instead, he has to aim at the pillar next to the staircase. The pillar is 77 units higher than the floor Mario is currently on, so he has a grand total of 1.5 frames to reach it. This is why, despite only needing 900 speed at the end, Mario needs to have 1700 speed at this point. In order to reach the pillar, Tyler aimed Mario towards the railing. On this frame, Mario's next intended position after 1/4 step is right here, less than 1 unit inside of it. The railing is 51 units wide, so there's a 1 unit gap where only the outside wall affects Mario, allowing him to get pushed by it. He gets pushed into the pillar's wall
insane.
hitbox, but the wall check is over, so he doesn't get affected by it right away. Then, because Mario is inside the floor hitbox, he gets pushed up to it and lands. This sequence works because the game treats collision checks in the order of walls first, floors second, and ceilings last. Tyler dives here and does a dive recover on the pillar for a very specific reason. When Mario lands from that dive recover, he can instantly turn. By turning in this direction, he now tries to move into a ceiling, which leaves him stuck in place, allowing him to let his speed come down to 1100 for the next section. But during the dive recover, he needs something to keep him in place.
Yeah,
That thing
punches
is
and
the
kicks.
other railing. Mario's first quarter step leads him in the railing, which has two overlapping opposite wall hitboxes that cancel each other out. So after this double wall push, Mario's position is inside of a ceiling, which not only prevents him from moving there, but also negates his vertical speed. If he did get vertical speed from the dive recovery, Mario would have caught the top of the railing and fallen off. Once Mario's speed drops down to 1100, he's ready to head to the 8-star door. He spends one frame on the staircase, which lowers his de facto speed just enough to avoid falling off. Then he manages to turn towards the star door and trigger the text as far left as possible. This is important for the next section. After closing the text, Mario can now redirect his speed in any direction. Because he's on the left side of the door, he has a near direct line to the 1-star door, which he reaches in 3 frames. He needs to trigger that text with a very precise speed and position, so he waits some speed out and then clips inside of the princess's secret slide room to realign himself. Then Tyler makes use of a neat high-speed trick to redirect Mario towards the door. If Mario is pushing up against the wall and C up is pressed, Mario will instantly face directly at the wall. With high negative speed, this causes him to shoot away from the wall perpendicularly, no matter his prior facing angle. This leads him into the door's text box. Again, after closing it out, Mario can redirect his speed, this time towards the secret aquarium entrance. All that's left is to perfectly aim at the quarter unit gap and do a glitchy ledge grab. And there it was, entering the secret aquarium.
That's
in 0
so
A presses,
insane.
compatible with the Nintendo 64 console.
That's so crazy.
After this
Wow.
enormous achievement, the A-Button Challenge community could sit back and relax. For a while, nothing really happened. Alright, that's enough. What if we say...
Wait, was that 2 days?
Kyle, nothing really happened. Alright, that's enough. What if we saved 2 A-presses this time?
Okay, another one. Man, I had a good prediction, huh? This is the 3rd time you've seen that. A jump dive to get height with the vertical speed. I had a pretty good prediction.
The development was a joint effort by Badboot, Sydney, and Tyler Caney. It makes use of a trick discovered in February by Badboot and Sydney, hyperspeed grinding. It requires a specific spot where a bit of steep floor is next to a gap in the floor and the wall. Mario runs off the steep floor, making him airborne. On the next frame, the wall pushes him back and the stick is held back towards the floor so he lands. This cycle is repeated for as long as needed. Because of the landing frame, Mario's speed is normally kept in check by friction, and he can't accelerate beyond the normal speed cap of 32. But if the floor is angled down and has low enough friction, Mario's forward acceleration, 0.15 per frame, can be enough to overpower friction. Mario can then build up speed to a certain degree. Because of limitations with friction and geometry, this method can be used to build up to roughly 400 speed at best. Despite that, it could still prove useful, so long as there existed a spot that filled all the requirements in Tick Tock Clock. This is where Sydney came in and found the edge of this treadmill. Here, it works slightly differently. Mario's getting a push from 2 wall hitboxes at once, which combine to send him back on the treadmill where he lands. After gathering enough speed, Mario can do a hyperspeed jump dive and reach the next level in a single A-press instead of 2. Finally, Tyler Caney executed the strategy to save the A-press, and Pan and Koic, as always, strung everything together. He published The Pit and the Pendulums in 1 A-press, and timed jumps on moving bars from 3 down to 2 A-presses. Stomp on the Thwomp, the only other star higher than this, still used a pedal spot strategy, so no other A-press could be saved with this new trick. As soon as hyperspeed grinding was proven possible though, an alternate strategy for timed jumps on moving bars was revisited. Over the years, many alternate methods were found that completed stars in the same amount of A-presses but with wildly different routes, sometimes faster, sometimes not. One of these was for timed jumps on moving bars. Instead of using a bob-omb to reach the roll into the cage star and then 2 A-presses to get up to the timed bars, one could instead use 3 A-presses to reach the timed bars and repurpose the bob-omb to clip into the final cage instead of jumping to it. A way to get up the cogs without the bob-omb was theorized but never actually accomplished because both amounted to 4 A-presses in total or 3 with Pendulum Manipulation. But with the discovery of hyperspeed grinding, suddenly where the original route saved 1 A-press, the alternate route saved 2. So the alternate method became the main one. But first they had to actually get up these cogs, not just think about it. The problem doesn't actually lie within the cogs themselves, but with this platform, which is slightly too high to just dive recover to, given that it's not oriented properly for a misalignment to exist. But with enough conserved vertical speed, it would be possible to grab the ledge. They just needed to land on the cog with positive vertical speed and get pushed off at the right time to reactivate that speed. Piece of cake. On the random setting, cogs spin back and forth like this. As they rotate, their wall hitboxes move around as well, creating openings on the corners from time to time.
Yeah,
More
that's weird.
There's a misalignment on the corner found in this region of the cog because this section points away from the origin. This is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because a misalignment makes it possible for Mario to land on the cog with positive vertical speed. It's a curse because this spot seemed just out of reach. It wasn't just that Mario needed to land there, he needed to get there with enough vertical speed to grab the ledge afterwards. Using mathematical models and calculations, the Rock Project and Sydney ended up finding that yes, this strategy was indeed just barely possible. The cog's wall on the previous frame could be used to help Mario get increased distance to reach the misalignment. Using their guidance, Pan and Koic was able to task it and the route was complete. The rest stayed relatively unchanged until the end, hyperspeed grinding to get up here in one A press, then Pendulum Manipulation to save another. But then the bob-omb they repurposed falls down from way above and Mario grabs it loaded to clip into
I
the
love
cage.
that, but then he just come out of nowhere. It's so funny.
Beforehand, and the bob-omb was released at the Hope using pause buffered Hitstun. Just 2 weeks after being brought to 2A presses, time jumps on moving bars was already down to just 1. 2 months later, on September 26, 2018, Stomp on the Thwomp underwent a revolution when a new petrol spot was found here. Well, actually, the petrol spot itself was already known to exist, but no one knew how to get Mario lodged in there like that. Until DS273 found a way to knock Mario into the petrol spot without an A-press using Pendulum Manipulation.
Oh my gosh, the
The
bomb!
old 5 A-press route, the one with 4 A-presses at the start and 1 hyperspeed jump dive, went flying out of the window. Instead, it was replaced with this. The beginning is basically the same as the pit and the pendulums in 1A press, only the hope is in a slightly different position. Then, 2 different RNG manipulations are done at the same time, Pendulum Manipulation and the rotating clock hand at the top of the stage. Pendulum Manipulation is used to make the pendulum end the spin here. This is actually nearly a full rotation, so when it swings back, it swings upwards to return to angle 0. This lodges Mario in the ceiling and reactivates the bob-omb, which falls on top of him and knocks him onto the pendulum's box. This allows Mario to turn towards a suitable angle for what comes next. When the pendulum swings back around, the shaft pushes Mario off the pendulum box and into the pedal spot. Once Mario is in the pedal spot, he builds up to over 600 speed and jumps out of the spot, instantly landing on the floor above. To preserve his vertical speed, he instantly pushes C up to enter first person. Otherwise, the landing would instantly bring his speed to 0. Then he punches repeatedly until he leaves this platform, where the conserved speed sends him flying upwards. He lands directly on the clock hand. This is why RNG was being manipulated before. After getting on the hand in 2 A-presses, all that was needed was to wait for it to make 3/4 of a turn and jump on a Thwomp to get the star in 3. This saved 2 A-presses at once for the second time in a...
Okay. I haven't even been paying attention to the counter up here. The game has 21 A presses left in it. That is crazy. And there's probably going to be another part after this too. I'm assuming. I could be wrong, but
a couple of months.
That's crazy.
After completing this run, Pan and Koic and crew were not satisfied. The pedal spot could on paper give enough vertical speed to Mario to reach all the way up to the star. The problem though was how disjointed the pedal spot was from the Thwomp. While Mario could jump all the way up to the star, he couldn't cross the horizontal distance in that time since having to resort to VSC to get past this platform killed all of his forward momentum. The solution they found was double VSC. The route is mostly the same up to this point. This time, Mario builds up almost 700 speed, which gives him a little bit more vertical momentum. Once he shoots off this platform, he lands on the clock hand by having it turn under him.
So he conserves it again. Holy crap, he's gonna punch one more time and then fall off and that.
Pressing C up on the frame Mario lands preserves his vertical speed on top of stopping him on a dime. Then the hand rotates towards the Thwomp and Mario releases the remaining vertical speed to land on it and save yet another A press.
That's
the highest star in the toughest stage for the A button challenge.
Now we're on
down
20.
To only 2 A presses. But hold on, clock hands are supposed to move clockwise. That's quite literally the definition of clockwise. How does the hand turn backwards like that? The answer is RNG manipulation, and a lot of it.
This is kind of a silly guess, but I'm kind of guessing it's a lot like the pendulum, right? Where if it hits on a certain frame at a certain degree angle, it conserves that and goes again. I think instead of going like 5 degrees, it's going 355. So then it looks like it's going backwards, but it's actually not. That's my guess.
The problem though is that once Mario enters the pedal spot, there's no longer a way to manipulate RNG. So, before getting into the pedal spot, Pan and Koek spent an extra 9 minutes manipulating the hand so it would turn counterclockwise by a third of a turn. Despite being on the random setting, the clock hands still favor moving clockwise. If you let the clock run without interference long enough though, the clock hand will eventually turn by this much counterclockwise. The only problem is it typically takes on the order of weeks. That's not ideal. So, Pan and Koek wrote a program that simulated the clock on a random setting and used it to calculate a way to affect the RNG so that 12 minutes later the clock hand would move exactly the way he wanted. His script found dozens of solutions, and Pan simply picked one of the more convenient ones. 2018,
Yeah, I was wrong.
2019. The community
so
was
funny.
as active and dedicated as ever to find A-press saves, but they were getting exponentially harder to come by. Even Tick Tock Clock, which was still responsible for 17 A-presses not that long ago, had seriously dried up and was down to only 8. It was time to think outside the box. What if instead of trying to remove A-presses from the total, they started adding them back? This is get a hand, up from 0 to 0.5 A-presses.
Okay, so they're adding them back so they can hold A for something.
If you've been following, you might know where this is going. First, adding a half A-press in Tick Tock Clock doesn't hurt. It's assumed that the star would come after entering the level for the first time, an action that still incurred an A-press. Second, the half A-press is useful here because it allows Mario to kick, which in turn lets him fall down with backwards momentum. This sets things up for spawning displacement. There's one major issue though. The previous spawning displacement was achieved on the pit and the pendulums, which is directly above and very much above get a hand. Despite that, Mario has barely enough speed to land on the lowest of the spinners. If Mario were to kick the wall and get this star, he'd be way short of the spinners. This one was solved by DS273. The problem with kick recoil momentum is that the speed Mario inherits is a fixed -48. But the ABC crew figured out that while it's true that Mario's speed can't be changed, speed isn't the only way to move Mario. He can also get pushed by walls. If Mario finds himself inside of a wall hitbox, because the hitbox is 50 units wide on each side, he can theoretically get pushed by double that, or 100 units perpendicularly to that wall. Now, because the ABC experts were trying to push Mario in the same direction as his movement, that proved to be a bit tricky because Mario would need to enter the wall from behind for this to work. But thanks to Pendulum Manipulation, it was possible to have the wall itself move into Mario instead. Unfortunately, even that wall push ended up being too weak to move Mario enough to reach the spinners, by a factor of 10. That idea was not gonna work. It was tough enough to get Mario to get pushed by a wall in the right direction once, let alone 10 times. Until DS273 had a new idea. The pendulum is made up of many tiny triangles to give the illusion of a round shape. As it turns out, in this specific spot, many different triangles converge into a single point. Theoretically, if Mario ended up
Why would they do it like that? Why wouldn't they just make like triangles that converge into the middle? That's so weird.
He could technically be inside of all of these triangles wall hitboxes at once. Like we've seen before, when Mario is in multiple wall hitboxes at the same time, he receives a combined push from all of them. So, if Mario ended up inside of all of these walls, he could get a wall push from each of these triangles.
Oh my gosh.
And how many triangles is that? 10 triangles. The path forward was clear.
Insane.
The goal was to get Mario in this point in the Starfall action with kick recoil momentum. Then he would get a massive push from 10 walls at once and move just barely far enough to star dance clip onto the spinner. Now the question was, how do you get Mario in there? Well, the answer was not easy. Unlike floors, wall collisions do use floating point numbers, so the point where these 10 triangles converge is one single floating point number, or 0.000025 units wide. Also, for all 10 triangles to be walls at the same time, the pendulum needs to be at a very specific angle, so extensive manipulation was also required. The point itself was also a little bit too high. Mario somehow needed to kick the wall from slightly higher than this platform. That wasn't enough to discourage DS273. Here's the route that he came up with and that Pan and Koic successfully tasked afterwards. First, there needs to be a carefully preset hope. Tal Mountain can be used to do just that. Next, Pan uses instant release to send 2 bob-ombs at the hope laterally, but at slightly different heights. This is so they can be reactivated later in very specific positions. Then, after climbing up to the turning hand, Pan manipulates the pendulum for 18 minutes until it starts making full rotations. He reactivates the first bob-omb which he wants to grab. Since he has to hold A to kick later on, he can't just grab it normally, so he has to use the ledge to dive grab it instead. He grabs it slightly bloated, which gives Mario a weak backwards push. Then, he reactivates the second bob-omb so that it snaps to Mario's position and explodes, pushing him through the wall. He normally wouldn't be able to stand in there, but here he can for 2 reasons. First, objects like bob-ombs can push Mario into positions that he normally wouldn't be able to reach by himself, like inside ceilings or out of bounds. We've seen this twice before in Stomp on the Thwomp. Second, this area is not out of bounds because there's a floor directly below. It's inside of a ceiling which traps Mario in midair but doesn't immediately kill him like out of bounds would. The swinging pendulum passes by and Mario can walk on it, which ever so slightly moves him upwards to the correct vertical position for the float-precise wall push. Then he keeps moving inside of the ceiling thanks to the bob-omb pushing him around until he gets to a fraction of a unit behind the wall, the perfect spot for the final part. The inputs in RNG to get to this point required brute forcing to reach the exact values needed. Now, all Pan can do is wait. When the pendulum is about to turn into the exact angle that yields the float-precise 10 triangle overlap, Mario kicks and starts moving backwards. He enters the wall hitbox and gets clipped back in bounds. His kick collides with the wall on the same frame that he touches the star. Then he inherits -48 speed and the pendulum turns into him. He enters the float-precise point where 10 wall hitboxes coincide.
Holy, this might be the most insane one yet.
1,000 units backwards, which happens to be just barely enough to start dance clip at the very bottom of the spinner. Finally, one small bit of RNG manipulation before this whole ordeal ensured that at this precise moment, the spinner would start spinning clockwise and provide spawning displacement to save the re-entry A-press. All 120 stars were now obtainable in 19 A-presses. The ABC crew had done it. The whole game was under 20. As complex and difficult the new A-press saves had become, it was worth the effort. With the community as large as ever, filled with talented experts working together tirelessly, the sky was the limit. But despite so many technical advancements, no discovery that came after this ever directly helped. The A-press count remained frozen at 19. Months became years. Ultimately, still sitting at 7 A-presses by itself, Tick Tock Clock had 1. In 2022, the A-press count is still 19.
Oh! Next time is this? Wow. Was that discovered on... That was discovered on the day this was posted? Oh, that's cool. So we're probably getting one more. At least. And then by that time, there's probably going to be a whole new discovery. What? Wow. That's nuts. I mean, I'm not a part of the A button challenge community. I don't have the big brain for this, but I am so appreciative of them. They make the coolest stuff. Pan and Koic for like tassing all this together, all the people that are finding tricks for Pan and Koic to task together, and then Bismuth for making these video documentaries for me to watch. It's fantastic. Fantastic video as always, Bismuth.